Hi and welcome to my video series on Microsoft Visual Studio. So far in this series we have learned how to create tables in the SQL Server, how to display that information into a grid view by using a SQL data source, and we've also looked at how to create database diagrams so that we can create relationships between multiple tables within a database. Today I'm going to talk about how to manage one-to-many relationships in Microsoft Visual Studio. When I open up my relational schema diagram in this particular database, we can see here that we have a database that has a number of tables in it, and in these tables we see that we have a couple of different one-to-many relationships. So for example here we can see here that we've got for this particular student, which is stnum here, we see that this is a one relationship or the parent key, and we see down the bottom here that this table, the stnum, would be repeated many times in a results field. So this is a one-to-many relationship, and we're going to look at how we can actually display one-to-many relationships in Visual Studio. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to go back to my design view, my default ASPX, and at the moment we can see here within my grid view I'm displaying the information about a particular student. I'm going to change that information, and then what we're going to do is we're going to change this information so it's displaying the many results. So basically in this case, if we're going to look at the relationship between the student and his results, or many of his results, we actually want to display the results in this particular grid view. So I'm just going to pause here and I'll come back and just prepare that now. Okay, so we're back. What I've just done here is I've just configured my SQL data source here. It's just so that it's pulling through all of the results in this results table, and I've just put in a couple of data rows in that particular results table. So if I just play that now, you can see that this has in fact 4 records in it for 2 different students, student number 1, student number 3, across 2 different types of subjects. Okay, so that's giving me many of the results in this particular database, but let's say that I wanted to filter by student number. So I only want to find all the results for student 1. So I want to actually display a one-to-many relationships. Okay, so how do we do that? So I'll just click out of that, and I'll go to my default page. Well, in Visual Studio, the best way to do this is probably to filter by using a drop-down box. If you go to your toolbox and you choose just from your standard toolbox or standard tools, a drop-down list, and just throw that on there like so. Okay, I'm just going to give myself another row in here, insert another row below, and I might yep, and that's giving me enough space there. Okay, so what I want to do now is I need to configure data coming into this particular drop-down list control here. The way that I do that now is I need to actually configure a second SQL data source. So I'm going to go to my data source here, which is down here, and I look for my SQL data source, and I'm going to throw that down here. And we know that we want to display just the one relationship in this particular field here, which will be the student number and the student name. So let's configure the data source so that we can get just the student number and the student name. So I go to my connection string, I create my connection string, and now I'm going to choose the table which says student, and here I want to put in the student num and the student name. Don't necessarily need to use the student name, but it makes sense because we don't always know what the student number is. So the student name allows a more readable format to that particular control. Let's order by, no, we won't, we'll order by alphabetical, so we'll order by student name, so it's just a little bit more readable. If you had hundreds of names, you'd want to make sure there was a surname in alphabetical order, and we'll just do that, that's okay. And we'll go next, and we can test that query, and saying, yep, look, it's pulling back those particular students. So that's great. And I will go finish. Now all we need to do is we need to configure this data source to say choose data source. And we're going to say, yep, this is SQL data source 2 that we want to display. So at the moment it's saying here, select a data field to display on the drop-down list. We're going to say student num, select a data field for the value of the drop-down list. It's saying student number. So the two different things there is which one do we want to display, which one makes sense to us? Well, we actually want to display the name, but we actually want to do the value comparison against the student number. So we'll go OK. Before we finish and edit, go out of that, we need to make sure that we click this little thing called a postback. And what a postback feature does is basically once it throws a query out to the program, what we want it to do is to actually come back and do a comparison with this data grid view to ensure that it's updating the grid view. So when we normally with a control, when you click this down and you select the item, that's it. But what we want to do is create a postback control, so it's posting back and updating our grid view. So we'll click this enable postback. So let's have a look what happens now. So I'm just going to run that website. And at the moment we see here it's looking really nice. I've got Bill Smith, John Smith in alphabetical order, and we've got the data coming through here. But the problem at the moment is that this information here is in fact dependent on the value that I get on there, and I actually haven't configured that data source to say, yeah, here my query is select all this information here, but only when the student number is equal to the student number in this control. Okay, so how do we do that? Easy. So what I need to do is now is go back to my SQL data source 1, and I configure my data source. And here what we need to do now, we go next, just as we normally would, and this time I'm going to click on my SQL statement stored procedure, and I'm just going to go here, and we know here at the moment we've got this select from results. So I'm just going to go to my query builder, and that's fine, that's okay. And I'll go next. And what we could do here is we could in fact put in where it equals a control and so forth, and we can actually put in the SQL statements as we would normally do. But we're not going to do that now. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to specify my table or view, and here what we can do is use this where statement. And what we want to say is where the student number is equal to that control. So the way that we do that is we click on where, and what we're going to say now is we're going to say where the student number is equal to, and the source now is actually a control, and there's a whole lot of different things that you can do here, but we're going to say it's equal to a control, and we need to now say which one the control was, and it was actually that drop down list 1, and we add that to here and we go OK. So now we see here that says select from results where the student num is equal to at student num, and it's passing in that parameter through that particular control. So we'll go next, finish, and let's have a look and see if that's going to work for us now. So if I go Bill Smith at the moment, you can see here that Bill Smith's number is probably 3, and it's only bringing back the student number for 3. If I go John Smith, we can see here it's changing the student number, and it's bringing back the many results for that particular student number. So that concludes my video on how to represent a one-to-many relationship in Visual Studio.